So imagine you take a memory, right? Say your absolute favorite photograph.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And instead of printing it on a piece of paper, you essentially weave it into the actual microscopic threads of a physical object.
Wow.
Yeah, and if someone wanted to destroy that memory, they couldn't just, smudge the ink or tear the page. They would have to completely unravel the entire universe of that object.
Which is wild to even think about.
Right. But that is the mind-bending reality we are looking at today. We are exploring a fascinating working paper by the Terziu family, and it's called Ceasm and the Ferroelectric Crystal.
It's quite a title, yeah?
It is.
Yeah.
And our mission for this exploration into the source material is, well, we're talking about you, the listener, who wants to grasp these profound concepts without drowning in all the academic jargon. We are going to unpack how a transparent stone, which is barely the size of a grain of rice, literally weaves its own brain-like memory.
And, what that stone actually teaches us about physics, about biology, and crucially, how we handle stress. Because the physical phenomenon at the center of this research really forces a complete rethinking of memory itself.
How so?
Well, we are so used to memory being a mark made on a thing, like a footprint in mud or data burned onto a hard drive.
Right, like an imprint.
Exactly. But this paper proves that memory can actually be a weave made of the thing itself. And it demonstrates how a system can be exquisitely sensitive to its environment without burning massive amounts of energy to do it.
Okay, I want to understand the physical mechanism before we get into the heavy theory here. So let's start with the stone itself.
Sure.
How does a crystal weave anything? I mean, it doesn't have tiny hands or a loom.
Fair question. So the material we're looking at is potassium lithium tantalate niobate.
Okay, a mouthful.
Yeah, we just call it KT and Li. It's a type of perovskite crystal, which they're essentially the Lego bricks of modern optics.
Got it.
Now, at normal warm temperatures, its internal structure is just this boring, predictable cubic shape. But as you cool it down, it approaches a critical threshold at about 19 degrees Celsius.
Which is, what, 292 Kelvin?
Right, exactly. And at this exact temperature, the crystal has to make a choice. It has to pick its electrical direction, its polarization.
So it's literally forced to pick a lane.
It is. But the magic happens in how you cool it. If you drop the temperature incredibly slowly.
How slow are we talking?
Like less than 0.4 degrees per minute.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, very slow. If you do that, it avoids forming this basic, chunky checkerboard of electrical domains. Instead, right near the surface, the electrical fields start to weave three-dimensional threads over and under each other.
Over and under, like actual fabric.
Literally. The researchers actually use knot theory to describe this. They assign linking numbers, so a +1 for an overcrossing and a -1 for an undercrossing.
Oh, God.
And the result is this global wicker basket. Every single thread runs through the entire crystal. We call this topological protection.
Meaning what, exactly?
It means you can't destroy the memory with just random noise. You'd have to physically cut the threads to ruin it.
Okay, so it's literally like taking a warm sweater out of the dryer.
Okay, I like that.
If you just ball it up and toss it on the bed to cool rapidly.
Which the paper calls a fast quench, right?
Right, a fast quench. The fibers just lock in all these chaotic, rigid wrinkles. But if you take your time and you slowly fold it while it cools, the fibers relax into a highly structured, organized shape. The speed of the temperature drop entirely dictates the physical architecture.
That captures the dynamic perfectly, yeah. The fast quench forces the whole system into a rigid, irreversible state. But the slow cooling allows it to maintain this flexible, really intricate structure.
But wait, if you take that beautifully folded sweater, heat it back up, and then slowly cool it down again, does the crystal weave the exact same pattern? Like, does it remember the specific basket it made last time?
Actually, no. It forms a completely new random map each time you cycle the temperature.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it isn't remembering a specific blueprint. It is remembering the capacity to weave. The framework in the paper refers to this as entropy as area.
Right, this was such a fascinating concept in the paper. It's like, instead of counting the number of books stuffed inside a library, you're just measuring the edge of the shelf.
Exactly. Usually in physics, we treat entropy as this measure of messy heat trapped inside a volume.
Like chaos in a box.
Right. But here, entropy represents the number of distinguishable, alternative, ghosted loops that the crystal could have taken and still stayed perfectly woven.
So it's keeping his options open.
Exactly. It maintains a library of alternative histories, keeping those options alive rather than collapsing into just one single outcome.
Okay, so if this crystal is this globally protected wicker basket, how do you intentionally alter its memory without destroying the whole thing? The paper mentions charged domain walls being the key here. What are those and how do we access them?
So charged domain walls are these places within the crystal's fabric where the electric arrows literally crash head-to-head. Plus meets plus.
Which sounds like a lot of pressure.
It is. In normal physics, that collision costs a massive amount of electrostatic energy. It creates immense tension. But in this crystal, those high-tension collisions are frozen into the weave. They're like tightly pulled knots.
And how do you untangle them?
Well, the researchers discovered you have to use light. But not just any light. If you blast those knots with a high-powered, really intense 1040 nanometer infrared laser, absolutely nothing happens.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. The weave stays completely locked. However, if you use a gentle, low-powered 514 nanometer green laser focused on a tiny 0.8 micron spot, the weave gently disentangles.
That is wild.
Yeah, it literally cuts the wefts of the fabric and leaves the warps perfectly intact.
Wait, hold on. Why? Because my instinct says if you want to break a physical bond or untangle a really tight knot, you use more power.
Sure, brute force.
Right. So why would a weak, gentle light fundamentally alter the crystal when blasting it with an intense infrared laser does nothing at all?
The secret lies in a mechanism called photorefractive screening. And it is entirely dependent on the wavelength of the light, not the brute force. That specific green wavelength acts like a highly specific key.
So it's not about power, it's about the right fit.
Exactly. When the green light hits the crystal, it frees electrons that are stuck in these deep impurity traps. And those freed charges then drift over to those high-tension head-to-head collisions and essentially screen them.
Screen them how?
They cancel out that built-up electrostatic tension. And once that energy cost drops, the fabric can finally relax and disentangle itself.
And the infrared laser just can't do that.
Right. The intense infrared light simply doesn't have the right wavelength to free those specific electrons. So the tension remains and the knots stay completely locked.
That makes total sense now. The paper describes this as encrypted null exchange.
Yes.
Which is this idea that a signal by itself is just noise and noise is just signal until you have the key. And the green light is the decryption key.
That's a great way to put it.
And it feels incredibly applicable to human psychology, you know? Like if you subject someone to a harsh interrogation, shining that intense, high-powered infrared light on them to force an answer, they just lock up tighter.
Oh, absolutely. The structure doesn't change, just gets rigid.
Right. But if you apply gentle, sustained attention to a specific area, the green light, it releases that built-up tension and lets them finally relax and open up.
And that actually brings us perfectly to the underlying theoretical framework that drives all of this. It's known as Ceasm.
C-E-A-S-M, right?
Yes, it stands for Constitutive Emergence via Adaptive Self-Measurement. And at its core, Ceasm is about a fundamental tug-of-war between two massive forces.
Okay, what are the forces?
On one side, you have exploitation. That's the gravitational pull to be safe, to minimize surprise, to basically roll to the bottom of the bowl and just stay there.
Safe but stuck.
Right. And on the other side is exploration. That's the outward push to keep as many future paths alive as possible.
And when those two forces perfectly cancel each other out, the system hits what the paper calls a self-sustaining horizon.
Exactly, the SSH.
It's an active still point. I kind of think of a surfer on a wave, right? A surfer gliding along the water looks perfectly still to us on the beach. But they aren't standing still at all.
Not even close.
They are actively hovering in the exact precise spot where the wave's forward pull perfectly cancels out their backward lean.
That is brilliant, yes. And at that exact balance point, the system reaches an exceptional point. The rigidity of the face completely collapses, which allows the system to achieve infinite sensitivity for zero extra energy cost.
Wow. Infinite sensitivity, zero cost.
Because it's hovering. When you drop the temperature of the crystal too fast, that fast quench we talked about earlier, you force it out of that hover, it gets stuck.
Because it panics, basically.
Essentially, yes. It collapses into a discrete single history because the demand for immediate safety completely overrode the capacity for exploration.
So being stuck isn't a character flaw, it's a dynamical regime. But wait, if you are successfully hovering, and you have these two forces perfectly balancing each other, how does the crystal actually build a three-dimensional basket out of that? I mean, two forces just push back and forth on a flat plane, right?
That is where we introduce the rule of three, or triadic closure. The paper notes this really profound idea that 2 is never enough, 3 closes.
Okay, unpack that for me.
If you only have 2 forces, or 2 threads, they simply encrypt each other. Mathematically speaking, 2 saddles create a semi-loop that will ultimately just collapse on itself.
So it's unstable.
Very. To make the structure durable, to actually hold it open, you need a third dimension, a witness. 3 saddles form a stable, closed, full loop.
Which brings up the math governing how these loops grow. I really need you to explain this magic number in the paper.
The 3.44?
Yes. The researchers claim the number 3.44 repeats across 18 orders of magnitude. They describe it creating log periodic beats, which they compared to Russian nesting dolls, where every doll is exactly 3.44 times bigger than the last one.
I know, it sounds crazy.
Is this just some physics dad joke? I mean, why does this highly specific number govern everything from how this crystal tunes itself to quantum qubit cloning?
I get the skepticism. It sounds like magical thinking until you look at the physical mechanism of how the universe scales at these hovering points. In the Ceasm framework, 3.44 is a physical constant of becoming.
Okay.
It appears in a quantum mechanics process called weak value amplification.
Okay, pause. We promise not to drown the listener in academic jargon. What is weak value amplification in plain English?
Okay, imagine trying to nudge a massive boulder. Normally, you'd apply one giant, forceful shove. Right.
Right, lots of energy.
Weak value amplification is totally different. It relies on thousands of incredibly gentle, almost imperceptible nudges. But these nudges aren't random. They are pre-selected based on where the boulder was in the past and post-selected based on where it needs to be in the future.
Wait, the future's pulling it.
In a way, yes. Because the system is hovering in that hypersensitive state, these incredibly gentle nudges perfectly synchronize. They sum their momentum together to move the boulder far beyond what those weak forces should normally be able to achieve.
Oh, wow.
The future is essentially selecting the outcome rather than the past just pushing it blindly. And the mathematical ratio that dictates how those nudges compound as they scale up, that is 3.44.
So if a system is hovering and hypersensitive, it can achieve massive results with almost zero extra energy. And the paper argues this isn't just happening in weird rocks, right? This is the exact same hardware running our biology.
Yes. The authors argue there are 2 gears but the same horsepower. They point to functional MRI scans of the human brain, which measure blood oxygen levels.
Good old Boldy scans.
Exactly. The researchers found that the bright, highly active voxels in the brain and the dim, quiet voxels, they were actually burning the exact same amount of oxygen.
Wait, really? So if you, the listener, are solving a complex crossword puzzle right now, your brain isn't necessarily pumping a massive wave of new blood to your frontal lobe.
No, it isn't. The brain meets the demand of that crossword puzzle by turning up the extraction fraction.
Which mean?
It just pulls more oxygen out of the blood that is already sitting there rather than flooding the system with more physical volume.
Huh. It's like a sourdough starter on your kitchen counter.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you want it to rise, you could dump a massive volume of new flour and water into it. Or you can just gently stir and warm the starter you already have. You get the exact same rise, but you used a totally different gear to get there.
That is a perfect analogy, and we see this incredible efficiency scale up to the entire organism, too. The paper highlights this fascinating case study of an alligator living in a marsh near Carlis, Louisiana.
Oh, the Carlis alligator. This part was wild.
This alligator was injected with 200 times the lethal dose of a bacterial toxin.
200 times the lethal dose.
And it survived. But even more incredibly, it survived with absolutely no rise in its heart rate and no increase in its baseline oxygen consumption.
None.
However, its fecal output went up 2,100-fold in a matter of hours.
That is a lot of output.
Yeah. The paper states the alligator handled the threat by keeping ghosted pathogen histories as encrypted clones.
Okay, another jargon alert. How does an encrypted clone actually help an alligator survive poison without raising its heart rate? Like, what is the actual physical mechanism there?
So normally, when an animal faces a lethal infection, its immune system relies on brute force, right? It brings massive amounts of oxygen to create a full-body fever. It floods the bloodstream with white blood cells.
Look, it's exhausting.
Right? And that systemic energy spike is often what actually kills the animal.
Yeah.
But the alligator shifted gears. Instead of fighting a massive energy-draining war, its immune system isolated the pathogen. It mirrored its structure to neutralize its toxicity, that's the encrypted clone, and then it just rapidly flushed the inert waste out of its digestive tract.
Wow.
It processed a massive lethal threat without ever escalating its systemic energy cost.
Life, brains, and these perovskite crystals.
Oh.
They all find that same active still point. They process massive amounts of stress without burning extra fuel, just by shifting gears.
Exactly.
So bringing all of this high-level physics down to earth, the source text actually offers a literal take-home experiment for you, the listener, based on this framework.
Yeah.
When you feel stuck in your life, when you feel that tension, do not fast quench.
Yes, absolutely.
Do not make massive, irreversible decisions in a panic just to minimize surprise and feel safe.
You need to cool down slowly, less than 0.4 units a minute, proverbially speaking. Let your options remain open and randomize. Don't force the old pattern to repeat just because it feels familiar.
Pick a small area of your life and shine gentle green attention on it. Don't subject yourself to harsh infrared interrogation.
Right, no brute force.
Just apply warm, sustained attention. Untangle the weave gently and see which threads remain.
It really is a beautiful way to translate quantum physics into lived experience. And it leads to one final, really profound thought from the text regarding what actually anchors these states for us.
All right.
The paper discusses the overview effect experienced by astronauts.
That's where they look down at the Earth from space and experience a profound cognitive shift, right?
Yes, and exactly why it happens is deeply tied to this physics. For everyone on Earth, gravity acts as our single-story anchor. It is a constant 1G force that dictates our biology and our entire perception of time.
The super prior, they called it.
Right, but when astronauts enter microgravity, that anchor is completely removed. Without gravity constantly pushing down on them, their brain's parietal alpha rhythm, which are the electrical pulses that help process space and time, actually slows down.
And what happens when that rhythm slows?
It drastically widens their temporal binding window. Their brain literally stops processing sensory input in rapid, discrete chunks and starts blending it into a wider, continuous flow.
Like taking the blinders off.
Exactly. And the window widens so much that their visual perception of the Earth rotating below them begins to physically synchronize with their own heartbeat.
That gives me chills.
The entire planet feels like it has become a physical extension of their own body because the anchor that separated them from it is just gone.
Man. So if gravity is the fundamental anchor for your internal clock, the unseen force dictating your physical and mental rhythms, what invisible forces are anchoring the way you perceive your reality right now?